Hey, good evening, everybody. It's Congressman Doug Collins. Hope everybody is doing well on this February day. It's a great day here in Washington, D.C., and it was a great week last week traveling northeast Georgia. I worked around the district meeting with hospital administrators, Amazon's operations, their new facility, and also celebrating the new grand opening of the Hobby Lobby in Dawsonville. Great time to be, as always, into the district and seeing folks as we go forward tonight. As you know, Washington is preparing for the joint address of Congress this evening, where President Trump will speak for the first time in front of the House and the Senate. One of the topics he's going to speak to us about, of course, is health care. And just this Saturday, I got the opportunity to meet with my Gilmer and Fannin County neighbors across the aisle and those who may have different opinions this past Saturday. And we all agreed that the meeting was characterized by mutual respect, constructive conversation and listening, and our desire to see people receive affordable, effective health care. We do differ, however, as we saw about a week ago on our other telephone town hall, but on some parts we can agree that there are some things that we can work together on. The President and I agree that Obamacare is an unmitigated disaster, in fact, on a death spiral, and that we're committed as a unified Republican government to repealing this harmful law. This evening we have a special guest with us, one of our neighbors from Toccoa, Ms. Brittany Ivy. Ms. Ivy is the mother of 2 sons and a beautiful daughter, and is a guest at the President's address this evening of mine. We'll get to hear about Ms. Ivy's story in just a few minutes, and I understand that her family struggle to make ends meet under Obamacare is one that many of the Northeast Georgians share. Our communities are full of America's hardest working people, and yet it is hard to afford meaningful health care. Access to your doctors, the medicines you need, the options you deserve, because the government has found its way into every nook and cranny of our lives. In case of health care, federal bureaucrats have muscled their way in between people and their doctors. The results are bad, they're getting worse, and Mrs. Ivy is a great example of how a good insurance plan became unaffordable insurance plan under Obamacare, of how small businesses stopped providing their workers with insurance because the cost skyrocketed after the Affordable Care Act took effect. Republicans have outlined a specific plan that will empower patients because we have been listening to our neighbors, and I look forward to talking with you about that this evening, and also looking forward to the President talking about it tonight when he comes before us at Congress. The bottom line is Obamacare has effectively become a tax on the middle class. As insurance costs rise, insurance companies withdraw from markets, and doctors decline in Obamacare plans, the financial strain on hardworking families has become unacceptable. So with this, it was our desire to find folks many that we've gotten over the years who have called us and talked to us about how bad the health care plans have been for them. And Brittany has come up, and we're looking forward to her being in the gallery tonight for President Trump's address, and also being with us tonight to share briefly about her experiences with Obamacare. And Brittany, I would love for you to share what's going on and what brought you here tonight.
In 2010, I was a stay-at-home mom, enjoying my 2 children, and I was working part-time for a health insurance plan through Blue Cross Blue Shield that our family was very happy with at the time. Each year, since the implementation of the Affordable Care Act, our insurance went up, and the premiums rose, the deductibles rose, and we were just struggling to pay those. And in 2014, they went up to a height that we could no longer afford, so I started looking for full-time work but was unable to find any, so I had to enter into the exchange, and we only got a small subsidy. It almost cost as much as I was making at the time. And then when we did finally get the coverage and we tried to use it at our doctors, they wouldn't take it. So that was our experience with Obamacare, and it's really been detrimental to our family, and the life that we wanted to lead has changed because of it.
Well, Brittany, I think what you're sharing is what we've seen for many in our district and all over the country. Is that these are the kind of things that, if you listen to many folks, they just say that everything's fine and that it didn't affect the private market. And I think one of the biggest issues that we've had with the health care, and I know there's many people on the line tonight want to talk about the ACA and Obamacare, as it's more commonly known, is really the fact that it was never supposed to affect the worker market, the private insurance market that came through our employers. So I think this is just something that your story shares what was the unintended consequences of something that was intended to help uninsured, but actually ended up catching folks in a crossfire. So, look, I appreciate you being here tonight. I hope you're going to enjoy the time in Washington, D.C. You represent Toccoa well and your family. And as we look forward to tonight, this is hopefully the first step toward restoring health care so you can go do what you want to do, being that mom raising those kids, and taking care of your family. And I think that's the choices that we're going to be working to provide to make as Republicans here in Congress. So I'm glad you're here. Brittany will be with us for a little bit. I'm going to be answering some questions now. Most of you figured out that it's *3 to get questions up and running, and a lot of you have asked questions as we go forward. And as we look forward to that *3, tonight is something that if you would like to ask a question, we're going to try and answer as many of those as we can tonight. And as we go, we're going to get started on some of the issues as we go forward and looking at it. So let's just go ahead and start on with Patricia in Dahlonega. I got that right. Patricia, you with us tonight?
Yes, I am.
All right. Well, go ahead with your question tonight. I'm glad you're with us.
Could you tell me where you stand on the proposal to shut down the Environmental Protection Agency?
Oh, well, I think the Environmental Protection Agency is not frankly, a department that needs to exist in its current form. I think most of what it can do could be handled in other departments, and especially when we have duplicate services provided in all 50 states. This is, I think that each state with their EPDs and all have the proposals that they can manage and work through. And, you know, as we had a conversation on Saturday about some of these issues that EPA enforces, the problem is they've gotten beyond the scope of what they're supposed to be doing. And what we're finding is interfering with not only what they're supposed to be doing, but also the economy as well. And what we need to be looking at is how do we, have the big bills. The Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, all that came through Congress, and it's an executive decision. We can work it, and I think we can do better than the way we're currently doing it through EPA, which has become more than an unmanageable agency. It's become an agency that decides to make laws on their own. So we're looking to see that. We'll see how the new EPA administrator works as we go forward.
That scares the daylights out of me.
Well, I'm sorry that scares you. It shouldn't, and considering we have protections built up and down the line, and that none of the big laws that protect the environment have ever been passed through EPA. They came through Congress, and their job is to enforce those laws, not to make up new laws as we move forward.
So what happens to the laws that are on the books?
They get enforced, and I think that's the issue that we have, the enforcement side, especially with environmental protection divisions in each of the states, and with the laws that are on the books that currently from Congress is being enforced as we move forward. There's an enforcement mechanism that could be done in working through different agencies that doesn't have to necessarily have the, quote, standalone agency of the EPA. If that was the way it was needed to work, it could work underneath a different department agency there. It doesn't have to necessarily work on its own and take up the resources that it currently does. I'd rather see it go to actual environmental protection instead of, doing things that it shouldn't be doing to start with.
Like what?
Well, I think that when you look at the expansion of the from EPA's perspective, when we look into the issues with the MAC boiler bill, where you're dealing with issues of that have shut down basically a brick industry with stuff that with emissions issues that can't be measured in a timely fashion. You've got EPA moving into areas of water control and from the waters to everything else that is just simply things that are being regulated on the state level as well. And I think that's where we need to continue to have this discussion. There's ways that we can continue to look at this and protect the environment, but just not in this way. So, Patricia, I appreciate you calling in tonight, and I hope everything's well up in Dahlonega for you, okay?
It's going well, thank you.
All right, you have a good night. Take care. All right, let's go continue on as we move through here. Let's look at the next question we got is from Richard in Brazelton. Richard, you there for me tonight?
Yes, sir. How you doing tonight?
I'm great, Richard. How are you?
I'm doing just fine.
It was great to be down in Brazelton seeing those new businesses down there, Amazon and all those others this past week. It's a good time.
Yes, sir. It's booming down here. A lot of
it's definitely doing that.
Yes, sir.
What's your question tonight for me?
Well, I'm a disabled vet, and I know for a while there vet issues and hospital care and VA care in general was a big topic, and I'm just haven't heard much about it lately. I'm just interested in what's going on up at the Capitol in regards to the VA.
Oh, Richard, I think we're continuing that's the fight. That is our largest discussion point that we have with our veterans, and our biggest constituent services issue that we have is still helping folks get in. In fact, I met briefly with the disabled veterans folks up here in Washington today. They came by. I think the biggest thing we need to do is we just need to do the simple reforms at the VA that can begin to start. Phil Rowe is now the chairman. He's a doctor from Tennessee, is now the chairman of the VA committee. Shulkin was not my first choice to be the VA secretary, but I will, we're going to give him a chance, see how it works. If he doesn't work, then we'll see we'll see that, if we can find somebody that can go in, do the common sense things that need to be done, take care of issues that they develop, have the firing and hiring capabilities that they need so that they can continue to be a part of this. So right now, that is very much of an issue. I know Johnny Isaacson, our senior senator, is the chairman of the VA committee in the Senate, and we're going to continue working hard with him to make sure that our veterans. My goal is that there should never be a veteran who has to call in to their congressman's office to get any help. And until that's done, then our job is not finished. So we'll continue to work on that, Richard.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And just to let you know, we're out here and we're still out. The VA is a difficult place to work through sometimes. So
well, it can be. Well, I appreciate it. And if anybody has any questions, especially those from our district, if you have questions about VA or you have concerns, call 770-297-3388. That's our district office, and the district office will be happy to help you with anything. So if anybody's listening on line 9 and have been having issues between, the veterans or getting benefits, or for that matter, Medicare or some other things, please let our office know. We'd be love to help. Richard, have a great night. All right, next question is we go live with James, I believe it is. James, how are we tonight?
You speaking to me?
Yes, James, how are you?
I'm Jim, but I'm fine, thank you.
It just came up as James. Directly. I'm sorry, Jim. I'm Doug, so that's the way with it. Where are you calling from, Jim?
My mail comes from Ball Ground, but I'm in Forsyth County.
Oh, okay, Forsyth County. All right, well, cool beans. Well, I'm glad you're calling tonight. What's going on?
I am curious, and I'd like to know why the Republicans don't respond to the Democrats' charge that when you repeal the Affordable Care Act, that people will instantly lose their insurance. I think people need to know that there's a 2-year transition period in pretty much all the bills that have been proposed.
Oh, yeah.
And that message doesn't seem to be getting out.
Yeah, it's a tough one to get out. I've been saying it everywhere I go, and especially the issues like pre-existing conditions, no caps, not returning caps to insurance, lifetime caps, and also leaving, the young people on their insurance till 26. It's just a narrative right now that is not popular among, the media and others, and those who want to do away with or keep the status quo. I've changed it now to where they're not wanting to fight against, fixing a law. They're just wanting to keep the status quo. We just not had that out there, but we're continuing that. In the next 6 weeks, you're going to hear a lot more of it, Jim, okay?
Well, I think that we're missing an opportunity by not separating this into two pieces. The Democrats will never vote for repeal, but if repeal is done separately, then when a replacement bill comes along, you could possibly get bipartisan support.
Well, there's some I think we will. I think some associated health cares, maybe buying across state lines, Mappili, McCarran, Ferguson. There's some that I think we're going to be able to get through that have to have the 60. But what we're doing is in the repeal part, we're also going to add part of the replace so that, if they don't want to join us, then we put that through on the 51 in the Senate and move this forward. So we got, the plan's going to be working through. We're still on the time frame, and we're going to continue to do it, okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Jim. Have a great night.
You too.
All right, next one is up to date. Let's make sure that we, let's see. Here we go. How about Mary in Livonia? Mary,
yes.
You there?
Yes, I'm right here.
Good. How's Livonia tonight?
Well, I'm like the former caller. We live in Hart County, but our mail comes through Livonia, and it's we're hoping for rain.
Well, so there you go.
And we live on the lake, and the EPA has made it very difficult for the Army Corps to keep any water in this lake. But that's not why I called. My concern is the gentleman answered his question answered my first question regarding the support from the Republicans to get this Obamacare situation repealed and replaced in a timely fashion. And from what I understand of your answer, that you all are on board and will be supporting that agenda. It's just a matter of everybody coming together and agreeing on the final bill. And if I'm not mistaken, the Republicans have said for years that they've had bills waiting to be signed on the former president's desk, and of course he always vetoed everything. So I'm a little confused as to why it's so difficult to get a final bill put in place in a timely fashion. But my second question really was also about tax reform, and where do you stand on it? Are you supporting the situation we keep hearing about with the hope that there's going to be more jobs, companies coming back into the country with their money, and it's all showing positive with the stock market, but if the Republicans can't get behind the agenda by President Trump, this will all just go up like a hot air balloon.
Well, I agree with you, Mary. Yeah, well, I'm for tax reform, and not just the corporate tax reform, not just the reform dealing with partnerships or S corps, but also dealing with individual reform as well. So as soon as we've got to get first through the ACA, we got to get through with Obamacare, repealing, and reforming the Obamacare, so our healthcare markets can come back, our insurance markets can come back, and we have access to affordable health care for everyone as we go forward. I think the tax reform is going to come next. We have to do this first because there's a lot of tax implications that we're going to be repealing in the ACA. And then we're looking forward to a healthy conversation. If everything goes as planned, we're hoping to have a tax plan voted and done to the president's desk before August. So we got a very ambitious agenda. So we're looking forward to it.
It is an ambitious agenda. We just need to hear more from the different factions within the Republican Party that you all really will get on board and that you won't stall this and then it's going to fizzle out.
Well, I think the interesting thing is we're moving faster than, and I know it sounds crazy, but we're moving faster than the president is on actual policy and legislation right now. He's taking a lot of the heat from the media and everywhere else, and we're up here. We've passed 14 CRAs, which is removing previous administration's rules and regulations. We passed the REINS Act. We passed a lot of bills up here, and we're continuing to work, and March is going to be a continuation of that. So, Mary, I appreciate you calling tonight. Y'all get some rain in Livonia and Hart County, okay?
And keep that water in our lake.
Well, we're going to do our best on that. We've been fighting that one for a while. Take care.
I know, Doug. It's been hard, but thank you very much. Enjoyed talking to you. Bye.
Sounds good. Take care. Bye-bye. All right. Let's get another one here as we go. We are on board with Rebecca out of Nicholson. How are we doing tonight, Rebecca?
I'm very well, Congressman. How are you?
I'm good. Good. How's life in Nicholson?
I'm enjoying clean air and clean water. I'm a new
Outstanding.
resident.
I do, too.
Yeah, and I moved here from Pennsylvania in the heart of the shale gas industry where I lost water quality. I had organic chemicals in my water, and my air quality went down the tubes, too, because of flaring around me in compressor stations where they process the natural gas and emit things like benzene and toluene into the breathing air.
Yep.
So I was very concerned to hear you say you support getting rid of EPA. If you care about protecting public health, air quality, and water quality, how can you in good conscience support getting rid of the EPA?
Well, I think the interesting issue is, Rebecca, I mean, I'm born and raised in the 9th District, so welcome to the 9th District. We're glad you're there. And we're there because we understand conservation and environmental. Farmers and the folks up in North Georgia have understood environmental protection for years. That's why we do what we do. One of the things is, though, is you got to understand, and this is it's not a, if you want to reform the EPA or change the way it operates or remove it and put it with other agencies, I think is not an attack. That's a straw man attack to simply say that we are, want clean water, dirty water or dirty air. And in fact, it's not a helpful debate process here. The problem that I have and many of us have with the EPA is it's just simply overreached what its statutory authority is. I mean, we look at the WOTUS rule.
It's a regulatory agency.
Regulatory agencies don't make regulations.
They don't do anything without being approved and passed by legislators.
Well, that's not true.
Get to make
and that's not. Yeah, I'm sorry, Rebecca, but it's not. WOTUS was not approved by legislators. The Waters of the USA Act was not approved by legislators. It was done by the EPA, in which the president today suspended. That was done from cubicles at EPA. It had nothing to do with that.
Bad move because Pennsylvania was old mining countries, and now mines can dump things into streams, and that affects drinking water.
Well, WOTUS had nothing to do with that. In fact, WOTUS was just simply a land grab more than anything else. In fact, the problem was you had the former Administrator McCarthy and others talking about it and saying one thing while the folks on the ground from EPA and USDA were actually looking at and saying something different. And when you have dry gulches, which for those of us who lived in Northeast Georgia for years, you understand what a dry ditch is. When that becomes a navigable waterway only when it rains, that's a little bit of an overreach is what we're looking at. So really our biggest issue is let's put it back into proper perspective. Let's let it do the enforcement of the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act and doing those things, but we don't need it to be expanded from that.
Do you support the dismantling of the EPA?
I've already said I'd rather see it in a different form and function, yes.
So you want to get rid of it. So what happens to national ambient air quality standards? What happens to toxic inventory emissions? Because EPA
I didn't say I wanted to do away with the Clean Air Act. I mean, I think what we've got in here is we've become that the EPA is the formator of these things.
Where would you throw it to?
Well, the states already have the EPD. There's the EPDs in every one of our states that enforce.
And it's subject to political pressure.
Well, you think the EPA is not?
Now you're changing.
I mean, really?
It's a regulatory agency subject to politics. That's right.
Yeah, the EPA reg is been.
ATSDR is not. They advise.
Yeah.
ATSDR,
well, it has been.
Which is part of CDC. ATSDR does not have the funding, but they can analyze data and they can advise EPA what to do. EPA is regulatory.
Well, I wish they would act that way as well, Rebecca.
The boss says, and the boss is the president.
Yeah, well, I wish they would act more as working through the regulatory agencies and not making law. But
in my experience with bad water and bad air, that's what happens.
Well, and I appreciate that, and I understand that. This is just one where we just sort of disagree.
You have clean
okay,
air
we can't talk
over
each other here.
Yeah, and you don't have shale gas deposits here. I wouldn't have moved here if you did.
Okay, well, I'm glad you moved here. I mean, I'm glad you called. We can disagree on things, and we can still want clean water and clean air. I'm glad you do. Yeah, I hope you do, and because I encourage you to. So I'm really glad that you're on this call.
Thank you.
Okay, I can't hear you because when I'm talking, we're both talking, so I apologize.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Rebecca, you have a great night, okay? All right, moving on as we go here to the next part. For those of you on the line, we've talked about EPA a lot. I know we've gotten a lot of calls here about that. I think we've pretty much, from my perspective, if you've been listening to the call for any time, the next little bit we've dealt with that issue and dealt with it a lot. I may take some more as we go through, but I just wanted to let you know about that from the EPA perspective. We're continuing to do that as well. But now I think we're going to go to looks like my namesake in Madison County, Douglas in Madison County. How's things out there tonight?
How are you doing?
I'm doing okie dokie. Hope you are.
I'm doing pretty good. I have a request and a question. My first request is that whatever form the Affordable Care Act or whatever you want to call it when it's finally modified, I would like to see existing conditions covered and specifically mental health issues. And
yes, I agree with you.
My question is, what is your position on a national concealed handgun permit reciprocity bill?
I don't mind the national reciprocity on handgun bill. I do have some concern that if there are, if we have a nationalization of this in which we have a standard that it doesn't simply just say if you have one in one state it applies to the other. I've seen some bills that actually concern me because they would sort of set a national standard that would get into my concern that some states have more standards on the carry permits than other have. I have a carry permit in Georgia. There's other standards that other states have put in, and I wouldn't want the Illinois or California standard based on me to have reciprocity. So I think if we move forward in a way that simply allows states to look and do reciprocity, I think that's a fine way to look at it. But I don't want to have the federal government laying out a rules or regulations that say that we may have to in Georgia do something that we've not had to do as we go forward. So I think that's my concern, but I'm supportive as we go forward, especially in this area.
Okay, thank you very much,
Douglas. Appreciate it. Well, good. Well, as we go forward tonight, there's a lot of questions on the line, and we're for tonight. But since they're getting ready to get us ready for the address up here tonight, there's a lot of questions out here. Several of you, Paula, I know in Blue Ridge. I'm looking down through here. There's another one from Janice and Jasper. There's some others who have asked about the Nadler bill. It was reported unfavorably out of the Judiciary Committee this afternoon. It has been reported unfavorably, and so that has been disposed of and probably will not be taken up again. As we look forward to, I think, the issues on, I think we've got some questions here. The investigations between Trump and Russia, and I know I've got several questions down through here, bipartisan investigation. Right now, both the Senate and House select committees on intelligence are doing investigations into the Trump, into the Russia ties with the election, the Michael Flynn situation, and those are being happening. I know that it's not being reported that folks are actually doing that, but we are having bipartisan investigations into those two as we go forward. Anybody that, especially if you hear someone asking for a special prosecutor, that law doesn't exist anymore. There's a special counsel. But again, I think when our intelligence committees, if they see a criminal investigation needed, they're going to do that as we go forward and look forward. A great question from Virginia Webb out of Clarksville. NAFTA, how is the changes coming to NAFTA going to affect our ag in our district? I don't know, but I'm going to make sure that, I'm going to be fighting for our ag because that is the largest industry we have in our area, and I'm going to continue to fight to make sure that our ag exports is something that continues to shine in our area. Susie Free, yeah, I support drug testing for those on government assistance. Pendergrass, George West, Windstream, and dish usage. We're still dealing with Windstream. We're not happy with what we've seen so far. People, if you're online and you have issues with Windstream, call our district office, 770-297-3388. Let us hear what's going on in your area about that. Ed in Dawsonville, my position on the border wall and how to pay for it. We're going to be paying for it, and we're looking through our budget process. And I believe, just as folks who have just got back from the border have said, our Border Patrol agents are one of the first that will tell you they need border, that the wall actually helps and continues to help them in that fight to keep our border safe and then to have a safe and legal immigration system that needs to be done. The issue, some of us talking about Medicare and Social Security. I think what we're continuing to do, I know the President's talked about not changing it for those who are currently receiving it. I think we do need to look long-term and how do we make sure Medicare and Social Security is something that can last as we go forward. I'm answering a lot of questions right now because we're going to have to cut this one short. We got another town hall next week. I encourage you to get as a part of this as we go through. Let me see a couple more on here. And one of the things is Ralph from Carnesville. We're going to have town halls when we normally have those, Ralph. I meet with constituents. In fact, met with about 15 constituents who, frankly, they didn't agree with me, and we had a very good conversation this past week. We've been meeting with constituents all over. But tonight, just to give you an example, most of our town halls over the years have had about 30, maybe 40 folks in them. Tonight, we've been talking to well over 2,000 or 3,000 and 1,000 at a time on the line right now. I'm going to continue to do what is best to get the message out and to answer as many questions as I possibly can. And whenever you see me, ask me a question. If we want to have a good dialogue, I'm always happy to do so as we go forward. How do you feel, Darla Light out of Cumming? How do I feel about Betsy DeVos? She has no obvious public education experience. Frankly, I'm not sure I would have actually named the Secretary of Education yet. I would want to see if we could restructure how we are actually taking money that is being spent on bureaucrats in Washington and seeing how we can actually put it into schoolrooms and classrooms. As a husband of a fifth grade teacher for 27 years, who has fought where many of the school districts, including the one in Forsyth County, get very little funding from the federal government to run their school system, yet takes up, and many of the superintendents and boards will tell you this, they may get less than 10% of their money from the federal government, but yet actually spend 60 to 70% of their regulatory burden is coming from the Department of Education up here. I would rather put it back in the classrooms and let's teach kids. Let's get out of the Washington one-size-fits-all for this kind of thing. Angela and Elberton, we're going to continue to work with getting our burden on our military families and going to be working on that. Jeff out of Mineral Bluff, we got to have legal immigration that works. In the construction industry, we need to E-Verify. We need to make sure that the folks who are working inside our borders are actually here legally, and we're going to continue to do that. There's a question up here. LeGrand out of Hartwell, Manassas, how are you going to hold Trump accountable? Same way we've held every other administration accountable. We're going to have looking into anything that is from the oversight arm of the Congress, and we're going to continue to do that. Pat Phillips, if you have a question, I know you got a question here on Agent Orange and some other stuff. If you got anything, please call our office, 770-297-3388. And as we go forward, just a few more questions. A lot of these are some of the similar questions. Water wars, Carl up in Habersham County, we're working through that. We've had some good decisions from the courts and also the water manual that's come out, so I'm looking forward to seeing that as we go forward, making sure that we protect our water. Patrick and Jasper, I think Rand Paul's had some good decisions on the health care. I think we're going to be looking at many of those in the repeal and replace aspects of what we're going to be looking for. And we've got to rebuild our insurance industry because right now it is broken. It was the one thing destroyed, as you heard from Brittany earlier in the evening, that was destroyed in this. Do I support President Gary out of Cumming? Do I support the president? You bet I support the president. And when he's right, I'm going to be voting with him. When I have differences, of course, we'll have differences. But I believe that President Trump's putting an agenda out there. Let's look forward to a night. Excuse me. Looking forward to tonight and hearing his message to us. Sorry about that. All right. Well, we didn't get to everyone on the line. I know there's a few questions still out there, but we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to call the office in the morning. If you got policy questions, though, I will ask you to do this. If you have policy questions on the line, call our D.C. office, 202-225-9893. Our office in D.C. is much better handling our policy questions from those, and when we look forward to that, the district office is much better if you got VA questions and things like that where we can help. So as we move forward, I want to wish everybody a great evening. Look forward. I think we're going to be back with you next week on another town hall later in the week. So please join us again, and as always, we look forward to serving you as you go. God bless you and have a good night.